Now here's where one of my cleanup tips comes in. This is a canvas that has the solution, goes through it, comes on the back. I go and I put this on a piece of plastic, and then I immediately take a wipe, which is moved over here. I take a wipe and I clean off this board while this is wet. You can still clean it off when it's dry. You just have to scrape it a bit as you're cleaning with your fingers to scrape the top off. And it becomes a little bit of a white, I don't know, just like little white things come off of here. If it's dry when you go to rub it, if it's not, it just comes right off. So I wipe it off, and then because the sticky stuff is no longer there to clog anything up, even your water, I take my water and my vinegar and I just wipe off the top, and then I'm ready to start on my next piece, making sure this is totally dry. And if you don't think it is, the back already was cleaned, so you can just make sure it's dusted and you're on to your next piece. Okay, now here I'd like to show you what happens when you don't do much prep of anything, or which the edges, you know, you're going to learn to work with that yourself. But what I want you to see is this watercolor paper is a bit of a slick surface, and it will, I think it will allow me to show you what happens if you attack the ink too strenuously in the beginning and what can happen to the print. I just wanted to give you a little idea of that. And for this, because the watercolor paper does move around, sometimes I do and sometimes I don't, just tape a little bit on the back somewhere so that it doesn't slide around when I'm putting the solution on it. So I'm going to put some solution on this, and because the watercolor paper, it takes a bit for the solution to go into the surface, it stays pretty wet on top, and this is how I'll be able to show you what you might not want to do with your image. Okay, I'm putting this on the way out like that to get all the, you know, if there are any air bubbles or anything under here, and just literally pressing it out. But if you watch the ink carefully, closely, where is my favorite little tool here, I can show you that when the ink is wet, you can actually move it. See how you can actually, if you scrape it, it'll actually scrape off as it moves. And you can move it to where you may not want it to go, and it will alter your print. Now this one has kind of stuck pretty much, but if I will put my finger here really hard, you can see that it makes a mark. So you don't want to get your finger on the print as you're working it, especially if you're in this type of a surface. So you can make all sorts of marks, and actually this isn't happening here because obviously it's stuck already, but you can also run there you might be able to see that. You can end up running the image off the edge. That was a little bit, but I just wanted you to see what I meant by moving the ink. See, if you have a dark spot, it goes more, and if you touch it, in the beginning, I would touch my image when I was doing metals, just like to hold this down, and I'd make the ink all run all over the place. So it's just something that I want you to be aware of. Also, on these slicker surfaces, like I said, it can come out the side. By now it's already, you know, attaching itself to the surface, but it can come out the side, and just something to be aware of so that you get the best image you can get on any type of surface. This is for those of you who have wide format printers. A lot of times, depending on the sizes I'm doing of images, I will print a bunch of images at one time, and then I stack these up and I use them as they come up. So when I'm trying to fill spaces, oops, now that I don't want to do. I don't want that ink on some tape. When I try to fill up spaces, or I have little pieces because I do 3D work, I have all sorts of cutoffs that I just keep and use when I want to use them. The other thing is, this is a good example of the mirror image type thing. If you can see here, This is the way the ink went on, and this is backwards. Same thing here. But if I flip it over, because this is the way my actual image will end up on a surface, then my writing is correct. So make sure you don't forget to use the mirror image, or the other one is like flip it horizontally or vertically so that you get a mirror image, so that your images turn out the way you want them to be, just like they are in the photograph. We'll look at the printing part for this class just in brief here. I'm assuming that you all know how to print an image 8.5 by 11, but if you have any trouble with that at all, please make some comments in the comment box, and I'll help you with whatever you need. First of all, this image you see on the screen right here is 8.5 by 11. So if I'm printing 8.5 by 11 sheets, this is perfect. Now for your ending sheet, that would be what you would print, the whole entire image. But say you would like some smaller images to print for your other file. And that would be to cut the 4 in pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, and use each one of them on one of your different surfaces. So if that happens, you could take pieces of different surfaces, like here. You could go up to your marquee tool if you're using Photoshop, or the like, something that'll give you some kind of a square or a rectangle. And I fixed mine here so it says fixed size 4.5 inches by 5.5 inches. So that means that this square right here will give me a selection that will go in my larger file of images, and I can just bring it over here and put it in the corner and then bring in another one. So that's a possibility, to go in through each one of these, take a selection, and then make your images to cut up for your 4. So that's just a really quick look at this. I would probably, let me go into my file right here. I would probably do a resolution of 240 DPI, PPI. The reason is because then you got some ink on here, because you got enough pixels hanging around. But if not, you can also do 150 right here. You could change this to 150, and the size isn't going to change because I had this box checked. But if you have the pixels in your image, I do a 240, and that'll give you more ink when you're going to use the transfer film. So you'll print this on the transfer film. If you're going to print this one, you know for sure that you don't want this to be backwards. So when you get up to your print file, let me go in there, and I'll just put this in an 8.5 by 11, and I go into my print settings. I'm looking for either flip horizontal, or I think there's another place that, yes, here it is. There's another place where you can mirror image. So I'm not going to do both. I'm going to do one or the other, because if you do both, you end up in the same situation again. So then I would print my print here, and then I would also print an 8.5 by 11, and then that would be all you need for the class.